In fall of 2018, I wrote an analysis of ongoing movements for boycott, divest, and sanctions specific to and concerning the nation of Israel. I focused on a specific company that had been targeted, which was Raytheon. And I was analyzing and comparing it relative to an auditor that had been coming up frequently in my investigations and was, I believe, connected with something I'd witnessed and identified as a crime at the time. By the way, it was not the only one that identified it as a crime. As a matter of fact, there was a major weapons shipment that was supposed to go to one country that had been cut off and had been stopped at the moment, at the time that crime occurred. I'm not going to go into those details right now. Those will unfold as we move along. But at the time, there were 24 states in the United States of America that had implemented state legislation around the boycott, divest, and sanctions movement that had basically made BDS, specific to Israel, illegal. I had submitted to the Supreme Court of Texas first and then attempted to send it to another jurisdiction. A motion I had written that believe that the boycott, the anti BDS legislation in Texas is unconstitutional per the Constitution of the state of Texas. Specifically, I believe that it violates the role of treaty relations between the United States specifically and any other country, and that it is beyond the jurisdiction of a state government to engage anti BDS laws as well as other matters concerning its unconstitutionality. Has that changed in the meantime since the nation of Israel and the legislature of Israel has implemented a policy to define the nation of Israel specifically as being Jewish? Yes, in substance, but not in totality. It is still unconstitutional in every way, shape, or form for states within the United States to individually and selectively engage state legislation around trying to sanction or otherwise criminalize or penalize people that have some sort of anti BD or some sort of BDS movement concerning their desire to engage in commerce or their desire to have their resources engaged in commerce with other nations. My understanding is that these are complicated issues, but it should not abrogate the constitutional expression of citizens of the United States because there is some volleying for political leverage between state legislatures and state governments and the federal government around access to resources that comes with the kind of intellectual capital and political capital associated with political movements for protest. That is a specific, I guess you could call legal argument. But I also want to say, I support anybody that wants to engage in a boycott, divest, and sanctions movement of any place for any reason. Everybody has the right to make a decision about how they are engaged, either as consumers or producers. They also have a right to say they do not want their lives, their communities, or their cultures appropriated or illegally expropriated to be used in commercial or other interests that do not comport with their values or ethics. At the same time, I do not agree with this current boycott, divest, and sanctions movement when it comes to Israel. I do not agree with the political definition of what's considered boycottable, divestible, or sanctionable. I support your right to do it 100%, and any attempt to punish you for engaging it is a crime and is unconstitutional and needs to be addressed as such. But just so you know, I do not agree with the political objectives of the movement as I have heard it currently defined. I do, however, agree and support anybody, regardless of whether or not you believe in this current manifestation of the boycott, divest, and sanctions of Israel movement, in understanding that these state machinations around their anti BDS legislation or anti BDS policies are very connected to acts of pension fraud. And I also am encouraging anybody to take that more seriously and not allow for international issues, very necessary issues connected to supporting people in other countries, including members of our family in other countries, to not allow that to divert attention from us taking responsibility for the way that our access to resources domestically can be used to promulgate criminal activity that ultimately gets those people in other countries killed.